what but you never know. And he's been the same job for many years. So it's not like
People like that are good. Not many people like that nowadays.
so he's been there. That's what I understand.
It says good things about it.
Stability,
It's a rare breed.
right? So because I spoke to about someone else about for employment, and he was helpful for an interview. You know what I'm saying? So he got
I told you one friend who lives in Tribeca now. Forget his name. He used to run the Russian.
Alex Labov, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna catch up with him. He was great.
Yeah, catch up. We'll catch up. He's a very,
he was great guy.
he's that he fits that entrepreneur.
He was definitely
Your type of
totally.
yeah, seriously. Please catch up with him. Okay, good morning, everybody. We're about to begin. We are on morning, Ralph. Ralph is back.
Yeah,
Was it easy for you to get on today, Ralph?
yeah, yeah.
Okay. Okay, we are on 38B.
We
Want to
went
say
back, we went back yesterday.
with the computer, with the classes. What'd you say?
I said we went back yesterday.
Right, went back yesterday. Hope we got more clarity. So what we were up to, we were talking about the oven, the tanor. That's wide on the bottom, narrow on the top. That gives off the most heat out of the three ovens that we said. And we were discussing if are you able to put a food on the side of that oven before Shabbat. Let's say the oven is on, the oven there's a fire in the oven, but I'm not putting it on top of the oven, I'm not putting it inside the oven, I'm putting it on the side of the oven. Are we concerned that maybe if you do that before Shabbat, let's say you place the food that wasn't properly cooked, are we afraid that you might come to stir the coals of that oven to help with the cooking on Shabbat of this food that you placed on the side of the oven? And we said the fact that you placed it on the side of the oven before Shabbat, so there is a commentary that says, therefore, it shows you're not really interested in such strong heat, because if you're interested in getting much stronger heat, you would have placed it on top of the oven. In fact, you put it on the side, outside. So therefore, maybe we're not so concerned you might come to stoke the coals. That was one side of the possibility. The other side was maybe we're still afraid maybe you come to stoke the coals to add heat to this, to hasten the cooking of this item. So Rabbi Yosef wanted to say that the Mishnah only said about a tanur, about this stove that was heated up. The Mishnah only stated that there's a problem of placing food inside or on top. The Mishnah did not say there's a problem of placing it on the side. Therefore, the Gemara wanted to say, Rabbi Yosef wanted to say that you're able to place food on the side, outside the oven, adjacent to the wall, getting heated up and cooking through before the Shabbat through the heat of the wall. Right? That's what we said yesterday. And we had Eiteve Abaye, and we got into Eiteve Abaye, right? So if we go Eiteve Abaye on 38b2, right? Let's just run through it. So the Gemara says Eiteve Abaye, Kupach Sheisiku Bekash. We said if you have the Kupach, we said is the oven that's the middle of the line. It's not as hot as the tanur, but it's hotter than the kira. Right? Good morning, Asaf. So we said Eiteve Abaye. So Abaye challenged Rabbi Yosef. Right, Asaf? Rabbi Yosef said that you could place a food that's not properly cooked before Shabbat. You could place it outside the tanur, and we're not afraid that you're going to go ahead and stoke the fire that's raging in the tanur, in order for you to go ahead and to heat up faster this food that you place outside the oven. Therefore, you can place the food outside the oven against the wall. But Abaye questioned him, because Abaye says, we said they had the middle of the line stove that was heated up with this straw stubble, We said it has a stat. If it was heated up with kasha gabava, straw or stubble, which is not such a strong type of heating element, right? We said it has a status of the kirayim. Good morning, Jaime.
Good morning.
Thank you. Thank you for being on the air with us.
Thank you.
So we're on 38B2 on the first column on the bottom, Eiteve Abaye, where we are discussing, are we afraid if you take a pot of food that's not properly cooked and you have a stove you have a tanur that's on, the fire is on, and you're going to place this pot of food against the wall is very hot, and would we be concerned that are we allowed you to do that? We know you can't place it on top, because we're afraid on top of the tano, because maybe you're gonna come stoke the coals. Maybe on Shabbat you're gonna forget yourself, and you're not gonna might stoke the coals. Are we afraid if it's not on top of the oven, if it's outside the oven? Do we say because it's outside the oven, we're not concerned you're gonna come stoke the coals, or not? That was the question of the Gemara, and Rav Yosef said you were allowed to go ahead and place the pot outside the oven against the wall. We're not afraid you're going to come stoke the coals that are inside the oven in order to help heat up the food that's outside this oven. Abaye challenged that. Because Abaye says, Eiteve Abaye, Kuba on the bottom of the page, Kuba Shesikuba Kasha Begalva, if you had this middle of the line stove, which we said this kubach is the stove that has only one room for one pot on top, and it contains a certain amount of the heat, and it's middle of the line stove, meaning we said there's a tanur, which is the highest level heat contains, and the kira has the lowest level heat. So we said a kubash, it's kubakash, if you heated it up with straw stubble, which we said straw stubble is not not such good fuel, because it goes out. It's not like a coal that remains on. Good morning, Boker Tov. Talid is if you go in the back to the store to the bottom is talid. So if you heat it up with straw stubble, hari hiu kirayim, we treat it like a kira, and the laws of kira are very lenient. Good morning, Simon. And meaning the laws of like kirayim, that you're allowed to go ahead and place the food before Shabbat on such a element. But if it was begefet to beitzim, if it was heated up with the gefet or with wood, which is coals. So that is a better fuel. Better fuel, there's more concern because you can stoke that much easier. So hariu ketanur. So if the kupach was heated up with coals, we treat it like a tanur. And we said a tanur v'asur. And you can't go ahead and we said by a tanur, it's forbidden to go ahead and place food on a tanur before Shabbat. But the Gemara says, what's the implication? Only because we treat the kupach like a tanur, is there a problem, right? If you would say that the kupach, the middle line stove, oven, would be treated like a kira, would be treated like a lower level oven, then you'd be allowed to leave it there. So the Gemara's question is, what would be this case that if you would heat up the kupach with wood, with coals, you would be able to go ahead, and if it would be if it would have been a kira, it would be fine. So the Gemara says, what is the case that we're talking about? Again, what's the Gemara? Let's focus in on the Gemara now. The Gemara is saying that if you have this middle of the line kupach oven, it gives when you're looking for the oven, you're not looking, you want a middle of the line oven, it's not the best oven, it's not the worst oven, you want to spend for the middle of the line oven. We said this middle of the line oven regarding Shabbat, if it was heated up with coals, it has the same status of a tanur, which would imply that it would have the same status as the highest level oven. But if it would be heated up with, but if it would have been considered like the lower level, like the kira, then it would be permitted for you it would be permitted for you to place the food there. So now the Gemara wants to know what will be the case. Ma'askina. What are we dealing with? What part of the kupach are you placing the food? Where in this stove are you placing out on top of the stove or outside the stove? That we're saying that it's coals are heating it up, and you're placing the food. So and where is the food? That you're telling me that now it's no good because I treat it like a tanor. B'mayaskina. So the Gemara says, Ilim al gabav. If you're placing the food on this middle of the line stove, on top of the stove, and there's a fire raging in the stove, there's coals and they haven't been covered. So of course, that even if you would treat it like a kira, even if you treat it like a lower level oven, you would not be able to put the food on top. So what are you telling me, that the only reason why I can't place the food is because I treat it like a what? Like a tanur, like a high level oven. Even if I treat it like a low level oven, I can't put the food. The Gemara is thinking that our Mishnah is talking about the fire was not covered. It's an open fire, right? You have an open fire here. And our Mishnah is telling you what you're allowed to do in the case of an open fire. No, because now, if it's, and the Gemara is saying, if it's talking about something that the fire is not covered, if that's the case, so it doesn't make a difference how you categorize this oven. If this middle of the line oven, even if it would be like, why are you telling me because it was heated up with coals, I treat it like a tanur, a high level oven, therefore it's a problem. I can't do that. Even if I treat it like a low level oven, like a kira, I still can't do it. Meaning, you're telling me in the Mishnah, this kupach, this middle of the line oven, because I'm treating it like the high level oven, there's a problem here. I can't do this. I can't place it. Even if I treat it like a low level oven, I can't put it. Why? Because it's on top of a fire. So elalav, it can't be talking about putting it on top of the oven. The case of the Mishnah has to be talking about the smoke. We're talking about you're not placing it on top, you're placing the pot outside the oven, you're leaning it against the oven, and that's where the Mishnah states, when you're leaning against the oven, you can't, and you're leaning against the kupach, the middle level stove, since we're going to treat it like the tanur, since we treat it like the tanur, like the high level stove, therefore you can't go ahead and lean it. Meaning we established earlier that if you have a low level stove, like a kira, you could place the food outside against the walls. But now the chidush the novelty is that this middle level oven, we're gonna treat it like the tanur. We're going to treat it like a high level oven that you can't place something outside. So what do we see? We see from here that when you deal with the tanur or even a kupach, you can't place something outside against the wall. So that is the challenge that Abaye is saying to Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef said you could place food outside against the wall, but we see from the Mishnah, the implication of the Mishnah is that you can't, because that is the Gemara's discussion here. Alav the smoke, uktani harikatanu v'osir, that it's like a tanur, and you can't place food outside an oven that's on a high level oven or even a middle level oven that you can't place food against that wall. We're afraid maybe you're going to come to stoke the fires that are inside. However, Amar Avada Barava, Avada Barava says no. There is no proof. Now we're on 38b3. He says the Mishnah bekupach garuf katum. The Mishnah is talking about that it's actually you covered the fires, or you cover the fires that are in the tanur, or you cover the fire, or you remove the coals to the side of the tanur. And that's the chidush of the Mishnah. Mishnah says that you're actually putting it on top. You're putting the food, the pot on top on the top of the stove. And the tanur, being that it's such a hot stove, even if you covered the coals with ashes, you can't put it on top. And similarly, we're going to treat the kupach, that middle of the line stove, like the intense stove of the tanor. And you also can't, if it was heated up with coals, even though you covered the coals with ash, we're still afraid maybe the ashes are easily going to go away, and you're going to come stoke the coals. That's one approach, and that's what the Mishnah is saying. But the Mishnah is not talking about a case. There's no inference you can leave something on the side outside on this. You can't leave something outside the stove. We're not talking about that when there's no inference of that. The Mishnah is not telling us there's a problem of doing that. Hacha bekubach kubach garufa kotum tanu garufa tumaskin, and that's what we're talking about. Hari hukitanur, and here is the novelty that we're going to consider this middle of the line stove, like we're on 38b3 toward the top of the page. We're going to consider this middle line stove, this kupach, like a tanur, like this, like the heavy stove that's very intense. Even though you covered the fire with ash. Now we're back. We're back, everybody. You want you?
Building is fortified. doesn't get the internet doesn't get in.
You want to send to the group that we're back?
Yeah.
Jaime's in the group, right? Because Asaf is still on. Asaf, just a little trouble with the internet. Tanya Kavotei Abaye. We learned in the Braita like Abaye. Tana, Simon, you have it? Simon 38b3. Simon, you got the second paragraph? Tanya Kavotei Abaye. What like Abaye? Tana Sheshikubakash, we have this high level stove that was heated up with straw stubble. Ain somchalo. You cannot place food outside this tanur before Shabbat. If you can't put it outside against the wall, al gabav, you can't go ahead and place it on top. If you can't put it outside, you certainly can't put it on top, right? Ralph, welcome back. A little issue with the internet.
Yeah, it's okay.
That's why we need you here, Ralph, live in person.
I wish I could.
I don't.
Boy.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So Tanya Kavotei Abaye. Tana Sheshiku B'Kash B'Gava ain't something. You can't lean the pot against the wall. But ain't Sarach Loma al Gabav. You can't place it on top. But ain't Sarach Loma B'Gefet Eitzim. If it was heated up with straw stubble, which is the lowest level of fuel, you can't place the pot outside of it. So too, certainly if you heat it up with Gefet or Eitzim or with wood. And Kubach Sheshiku B'Kash B'Gava. And that's, but if you have a kubach, the middle level stove that was heated up with straw stubble, somchin lo, we could go ahead and because it was heated up with the low level fuel, you could heat it, and it's a middle line stove, so therefore you could go ahead and we got the Maytag stoves, we got the GE stoves, right? So, but here it's not about the brand name; it's about how the makeup of the stove is, right? So kubach is kubach b'gava. If this middle of the line stove was heated up with kasha gava straw stubble, somchin lo, you could go ahead and lean the pot against the wall, and the nosnin al gabav, and you could even place the food on top of this kupach. Now. Right, because the fire is because it was heated up with straw or stubble, right? Now, but if it was gefet or eitzim, but if it was go ahead and gefet of eitzim, if it was heated up with coals or gefet, then we treat the kupach like a tanur. And then we say, Ein somchin lo, and you can't go ahead and place this pot next to this tanur. Okay, so that ends that piece. So we see from the Abaye says, I got a Braita on my side, that the Braita, there's a letter of Vav, also which seems to indicate that might be the halacha, that you cannot lean a pot that's not properly cooked before Shabbat against a tanur, a tanur which is the high level stove, which is wide on the bottom and narrow on the top. And not only a tanur, if it's a kupach, if it's a middle level stove, you also can't go ahead and do that if it was heated up with wood. Now, but a kira, what we established earlier, the lowest level stove, you could leave a pot before Shabbat against the wall. Got it, everybody? That's what it seems like. The highest level, the middle and the highest level, middle of the road stove, the highest level stove, which is the kupach and the tanur. Kupach is middle, tanur is the top, highest level. Both of them, you can't lean it. If there's a fire raging in the tanur, you can't go ahead and lean something against the walls of that tanur. Now, would we say, but you wouldn't be able to lean back? you lean something against the walls of that tanur, or even that kupach if it's heated up with coals. If it was heated up not with coals, kasher begavava. So this Breita says that even if it was heated up with
Oh,
straw or stubble, when it depends if you're a high level stove. Morning, Nathan. Good to see you. If it was heated up with, if it's the tano, the most intense oven, even if it's heated up with straw or stubble, you can't lean something against the walls. But if you're in the middle of the line, like a kupach, if it was heated up with straw and stubble, there you would be able to lean it against the walls, right? And okay, now, and according to the text of the Vilna Gaon, you would be even allowed to go ahead and place it on top, just like a kira. If something is heated up with straw stubble before Shabbat, it would seem that you could go ahead and put it on top, because since the fire is going to go out, it's only straw stubble, so therefore we're not afraid of the stoking. So, morning. So the Gemara says, Amalei Rav Acha b'rei de Rava l'Rav Ashi. Rav Acha b'rei de Rava says to Rav Ashi, we've been discussing the kupach, the kira, the tanur, the three different types of what? Of ovens that we deal with. So could you describe what they look like? What is this oven that you're telling me is the kira? What does identify these ovens? He says, Hai kupach hechidami. He says, before we get first he says like this. Before we get to the nature of the showing us what the kupach looks like, he says, Hi kupach hechidami. What's the nature regarding the heat of this kupach? Right, this kupach we said is the middle of the line oven. Ikikiridami. If the heat, meaning we know this is let's say a kira, we said is a stove that has room for two pots. A kupach we said is a stove that has only room for one pot on top. And the tanur we said is wide on the bottom and narrow on top. But now you're telling me this, let's say these are the different types of ovens, different types of stoves. What's the heat level of each of these things? Do they give off the same amount of heat? Not give off the same amount, so the Gemara says. But now the Gemara is focusing on the kupach, the middle of the line, that has only one pot on top. So is the heat the same level of a kira? Or is the heat level the same level of a tanur? Now, we've been saying until now there's three different levels of heat, right? That's how we've been learning, right? Lower level, middle level, and top level. But that's because we know the Gemara, okay? But the Gemara, he's asking the question. He's asking what's the nature of the heat? It's a different type. You can say something can look different and be made differently. Doesn't mean you can have the same result, right? One could be narrow on the bottom, wide on top, and unless you understand the mechanics, you understand that unless you understand that this is different, you look at two different things, if two different cars, it could be two different cars drive the same, they could be made differently and look differently, and the figure is differently, but they could get the same result. You get two different cars that the way the makeup of the car now it's a different drive. It's different. So that is this question. Hi kupa chichidami. What's the nature of the heat of this kupach? Ikikiradami, if the heat is similar to a kira, which we said we have certain laws about the kira, which we said until now is the lower level oven, the two-pot oven, two-pot stove. Ikiradami, sa'afilu begefet beitzim. Nami, it should be even permitted. We said, if something is garufa katum. If you have a stove that you covered the stove, let's say you have the kira, we put a blech on, right? We put a blech on. You could go ahead and leave food before Shabbat on that because you covered it. So if if the kupach gives a similar heat as a kira, so you should be able to go ahead, even if it was heated up with wood, you should be able to go ahead and place food on top of it. And we said that by a kupach, if it was heated up, we treat a kupach like a tanur. We said a tanur, even if you go ahead and you covering the coals before Shabbat with some ash is not good enough. You can't leave food on top of that tanur before Shabbat. We said one reason is because those ashes are just going to go away very fast because it's so hot. So, and you told me the kupach has the same status as the tanur, that you can't do it. But if the heat of the kupach, if this middle of the line, if this type of stove gives off the same heat as the kira, so then it should go ahead and get the same laws of the kira, that if you covered it with ash, it should be good. So obviously, Eli, you have to say, and if it's kitana domui, so you can tell me it has the same amount of, it's like heat, like a big, like that tanur, like that narrow on the one on the bottom and narrow on top. So then I feel a kashbagaba namilo. Even if it was heated up with straw and stubble, it should be a problem to put food on it, because we said that, and because we said by a tanur, the high level oven, even if it was heated up with straw or stubble, you can't go ahead and place food on top. So the Gemara says, Amalei. So he says the following. Rav Ashi answers, Nafish havlei midikira. This kupach, this middle of the line stove, has more heat than a kira. It has more heat than the two-pot stove, but is zuta havlei mitanur. It has less heat than the tanur. Because it has less heat from the tanur, therefore it doesn't get the same laws of the tanur. It doesn't have this, it has more heat than the kira, but doesn't get the same laws as the kira. It's its own man, so to speak. It has its own identity. It has its own nature, meaning its heat. This kupach has more heat than the lower level oven, less heat than the higher level oven, and because of that, it has different. We give it certain laws. We treat it like the higher level oven in the morning. When it comes to, if it was heated up with wood, we give it the laws. We treat it in halacha like the higher level oven. But when it was heated up with straw stubble, for the lower level fuel, we treat it like a lower level oven. Right? That's like the compromise based on the situation. Morning, Steve.
Okay.
Boker Tov. Hi, Hechi Dami. Good to see you. Hechi Dami Kupach. Now the Gemara identifies what is a Kupach. Hechi Dami Kupach. Hechi Dami Kira. Amar Rabbi Yosef Bar Chanina. So Chanina says, Kupach Mokom Shvitat Keder Achat. By the way, Ralph, we're finishing this subject. We're going to be getting to a new subject tomorrow, hopefully. Okay, this was a heavy subject. This was not simple, right? Very, we're not bakers. Gotta leave the ladies are more in the kitchen, many places with the stoves and the oven, and we're living in the generation of fast food. Gotta be careful about that, by the way. Not so healthy. But morning, Boker Tov. So now Gemara says, Hechidami kura, hechidami kupach. What's a kira? What's the case kira of the kupach? Omar Yosef B'chanina. Kupach is its length and its width is the same. It's the same size as its width, like a square, or to say it's a square. You have the length and the width are the same, and it's mokom shvidat kterachat. You have enough room to place one pot on top of this stove. That is a kupach, and however, a kira is mokom shvitat shtei kederot. Kira is rectangular and has room for placement of two pots. And if you have room for two pots, there's more space for the air for the air to come in, air to come out, and therefore the fire is not as doesn't give off the same amount of heat, and that's the explanation for that. Now, Amar Abaye, Abaye says Itema Reb Yirmiyah. Some say it was Reb Yirmiyah who said Af Ana Nami Tenina. We have a Mishnah in Kalim that indicates this is the right definition. We're trying to prove that the definition of a kira is a stove that holds two pots on top. It has space opening. It has opening for two pots, and a kupach is only one pot. Where do we see that? We have the Mishnah says like this: kira shenechlaka la'orka. Let's say you have a kira. The stove became tameh. It became contaminated. Let's say there's a dead sheretz, a certain type of dead mouse or whatever was in contact with this, or someone who was tameh that has the ability to contaminate, touch this oven. Now, how do you can make one way it can become pure is if you break it. If you have a utensil that's tameh, contaminated, if you break it, it's no longer a utensil. So sometimes you can bring something in a mikveh, right? There's certain things that mikveh will do it, but there's other ways. Some things if you without going to the mikveh, you could remove the impurity of the item by breaking it. We don't always looking to break things, and then you have to break it. You want to reuse it. You have to put it back together, right? So the kira, so that's what the Gemara is going to say. The Mishnah is going to state, if you have this kira, this stove that became contaminated, shenechleka, if it was split, you got to cut. It was split. The kira was split in half. So now the question is, which way was it split? La'orka, if you split it according to the length of the kira, so if you split it according to the length, so then now you knocked out, you cut in half each place where you put a pot. If you look at the pictures, a nice picture on the bottom, see it says kira that is split on 38B3 on the right bottom. So imagine here is one pot, place for one pot, another pot. So if you got to cut, if you cut it right, I'm showing everybody with my hands, right? One pot, two pots. If you cut it this way, so now you split the top in half. So now you don't have a place for any pot to place. If you split it over here in this way, with ways, so then now you still have each one is separate than each other. It's no longer, but it's still usable. You didn't cut the thing in half. So therefore the Gemara says, if you split it according to the length, then tahorah, then the kira is no longer contaminated. But but if you split it on the width ways, then tameah, then it still is tameh, because each place now has room for one pot. But a kupach, which we said is what? Has only room for one pot, so it doesn't matter any way you slice it this way, you slice it this way, it's no longer usable. Right? Look at the picture in the bottom kupach. See the bottom corner of the page? Good morning. It says kupach that is split. See, lengthwise, widthwise, it's knocking it out. It's ruining it either way. Therefore, it says whether you split it the width or the length, it is tahar. It is pure because it's no longer usable. What's no longer usable, therefore, it lost its identity as a utensil. Therefore, it's pure again. It's not contaminated anymore. Okay, Mabruk, Mazel Tov, we finished with the Mishnah. It's a very complicated Gemara that we had, and Ralph is going to be thinking about this Gemara for a long time. Have a great day. All the best, everybody.